Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. This is the first session of our 2022 International Symposium. I'm very pleased to be introducing you to this first panel, Success Amidst a Pandemic, Prosthetic Innovation in Ecuador Short-Term Study Abroad Program. We've got some excellent presenters for you today. I've got Brett Epic-Beal, who is the undergraduate programs manager in the School of Biomedical Engineering, Kevin Lehrer, professor of biomedical, electric, and computer engineering, Deborah Misaraka, undergraduate academic advisor in the School of Biomedical Engineering, Sara Lucio Paredes, program director at ROMP Global, and Jonathan Neighbor, who's also program director at ROMP Global. So we'll have time for our panelists to share with you today, and then time for a Q&A at the end of that. At the end of the program, there'll also be an opportunity for you to fill out a short survey, and we would strongly encourage you to do so. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to our panelists. Welcome again, and we look forward to the session this morning.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our session this morning. Success Amidst a Pandemic, Prosthetic Innovation in Ecuador. Wish we could all be in person, but at least we're together. Some of us are probably wearing pajama pants, so that's always a good thing.
It's really our pleasure to be here.
So first, I'd really like to thank the Office of International Programs for holding this symposium and bringing these important topics to the CSU community and beyond, and to thank our guest speakers that are here today. Representing our partner organization, the Range of Motion Project. Thank you so much for being here. Our CSU faculty and staff presenters, and of course, most importantly, we have some students here today to talk about their experience last fall in Ecuador. So thank you all for being here. I'd like to introduce myself. As was mentioned, my name is Deb Misaraka, she, her pronouns, and I am an undergraduate advisor in the School of Biomedical Engineering here at CSU. And I'm just really excited to be here today. We don't do things too formally in BME. So as you can see in my headshot that I have, so we'd love to hear the questions that you have for the Range of Motion Project for regarding the Study Abroad program. And we will be monitoring the chat for any questions, and we'll answer those as we can throughout the session. So I'm kind of serving as our MC today. And I would just like to kind of start off with our agenda and what you can expect from the session. So I'll start off with a little history of how the Study Abroad course kind of began at CSU and just some of its initial achievements. And then you'll get to know our awesome guest speakers that are here from the Range of Motion Project, Sarita and Jonathan. After that, we'll kind of dive into the 2021 experience. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. There we go. And you'll get to know our amazing faculty and staff co-leaders who adjusted and successfully took 14 students to Quito last fall. And then my favorite part of the session will be toward the end, which is a student panel. We have 3 panelists that will join us today and talk about their experience, which is great because you just get to hear directly from the students and what was involved last fall during the pandemic. So our next, sorry, I'm jumping over a little bit. Got 2 screens going here. Sorry about that. So just to give you a little history and overview of how this got started at CSU, there's really so many people who've been involved with the development of the Study Abroad. Ellen Brennan-Pierce, she is SBME faculty, and she helped co-develop and co-lead this Study Abroad back in 2018 and 19 with me. And Amy Jones and Ed Abroad, I just wanted to say thank you to her because she really had so much involvement getting this going at CSU. But I truly owe the conception of the Study Abroad to Dr. Kevin Lehrer and one of our former advisees, Emma Hurley. During a summer retreat in 2016, when I first started at CSU, I was hiking in the mountains, which you know, it's the only thing you do here in Colorado during a retreat with Brett and Kevin, and getting to know each other. And Kevin said to me, you know, what is really important regarding the student? What do you think is really important regarding the student experience? Oh, sorry, I heard somebody. And that was a really easy question for me to answer, which is service learning and study abroad opportunities and getting students outside of the classroom. Because of course, we all know that the classroom experience and the content that students learn is so important, but really applying that knowledge and getting outside of the classroom, to me, really gives the students that holistic experience. So to my surprise, Kevin was like, that's great, you know, go for it, start something, and which was kind of scary, but really exciting at the same time. And then I took that information and kept it in the back of my mind during our advising appointments with my students. And what I kept hearing from students basically is that they really want to help people. Biomed students, that's a recurring theme that I would hear from them. And then when it came to study abroad, I would hear that I don't know how to fit it in my curriculum, or I don't think I have time for that, or I don't know what opportunities are available to me. So keeping that in mind, it was important to me to try to find a way to create some kind of experiential opportunities for our students. And that is when I met with one of my advisees, and I was kind of discussing this idea with her, and she said, oh, I think there's this nonprofit in Denver who works with prosthetics. Oh, awesome, great. So thank you, Google. Thank you, Emma. Type. I found Range of Motion Project, and they had really already laid the groundwork and are just this amazing organization, which I'm really excited for you to hear about today. So I am not good with PowerPoint. So after we returned from Ecuador and had this amazing experience in 2018, I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to the support that we received from CSU and the community upon return. The Walter Scott College of Engineering really supported us. Thank you to Dean McLean and Anthony Marchese, and we had private donors who were offering scholarships for this program. We were featured in NOCO Style magazine article, which focused on one of our attendees, Dominic Castillo. We had a CSU TV interview. I didn't even know there was a CSU TV on campus, so that was really cool. And we actually, Colorado Prosthetist reached out to us, and that person is now a guest speaker during some of our pre-departure programs, so that was really great. We also were able to present at a Biomedical Engineering Society conference. Ellen Brennan Pierce, who I mentioned earlier, the faculty co-leader, had created a pre and post assessment that was based on our ABET standards, and basically seeing how students felt before the experience and after. And it was really cool to see some of those results and how the skills that the students had been able to build during their experience in Quito. And then most recently, we had a source article, which I think Brett might put in the chat, a link to that at some point, and our SBME newsletter, which focused on the Fall 21 pandemic experience. And then next, I just wanted to kind of mention something that we were hoping would come out of the study abroad. We really were excited that the students were having this experience, but we were wondering, how can we bring this back to CSU and kind of go beyond the study abroad experience? And so luckily there was something called a venture fund that we had some of our 5th year students who are in a senior design project. They requested funding, and they were able to continue working on a project based on some of the issues that they had identified with ROMP in Quito. So they submitted a proposal and were able to get funding. And we had a team of BME mechs and BME EEs. Our students receive 2 degrees in biomedical engineering, and then a traditional engineering degree, mechanical, chemical and biological, and electrical. And so it's a very diverse team. And they had created a prototype And we were lucky enough to return to Quito in 2019 so they could test their prototype, and ROMP graciously accepted us there, and we worked with them, and it was just really great to have that collaborative experience with them as well. So basically, I just wanted to, my part, end with some overall achievements of the study abroad. We had a CAPT program in 2018, and our students directly assisting creating over 50 prostheses over all of our 3 offerings that we've had so far. We've increased the number of engineering students that are studying abroad, which I know is a goal of our college and university. It led to the senior design project that I mentioned, and then we've built this relationship with ROMP and others outside the CSU community, which we're so happy to have. And this also increased some revenue for SBME for future scholarships. And I know Kevin is such an advocate for our students and creating equity. And so one of his goals was to create a $4,000 scholarship for a student who had high financial need, so that we can ensure that all students have access to this amazing opportunity. And then hopefully this is leading to some future ventures for CSU. We are potentially proposing a global engineering certificate and another winter break study abroad in Lisbon, Portugal. So that kind of gives you a backstory about the CSU course. And now I'd love to turn this over to ROMP and our speakers. Thank you again, Sarita and Jonathan, for being here today. We really appreciate it, and hopefully everybody can learn a little bit more about your organization.
Well, thank you very much, Steph. Hi, everyone. My name is Sara. I'm speaking here from Ecuador. I'm the program director, and here with me is Jonathan Lehrer. He is the program director located in Guatemala. Well, we've been working with ROMP. Well, ROMP has been working for some years now with CSU, as you guys heard from Deb. And I'm gonna share a bit of first what we do as ROMP, and then like what the experience is like, so we can maybe at the end have some questions for those who wanna join our programs, for those who already have been part of one of our programs, but maybe wanna come back. So could someone like lead me to the next slide? Thank you. So first of all, our mission is to ensure the access of high quality prosthetic care for underserved people. What happened here in Latin America is that access to healthcare and prosthetic care specifically is very limited. And when the patients are able to access it through private healthcare or public services, well, the prosthetic are very basic. Most of the prosthetics devices they receive are made of wood. They're very stiff. They give them very limited mobility. So aiming to make progress in several countries like Guatemala, Ecuador, and in the future, other countries in Latin America, that will help these patients acquire mobility, understanding mobility as a whole range of not only physical possibilities, but also the possibility to get back into society as a person that can work, can study, can dream, and even acquire any desires, or maybe like even pass the barriers and limitations that limited mobility through the loss of a limb creates. So can you help me with the next slide? So well, we've been working here in ROMP for the past 17 years. Is work, community-based rehabilitation services and prosthetic care. Guatemala has an extensive CBR program that has already passed the pilot phase, and we're projecting ourselves as Ecuador program to reply the same program here in Ecuador. So despite the limitations with the pandemic, we've been able to increase not only the programs we have here in Ecuador, but also the experience that you can have, not only with pop-up brigadas as we used to do in the past. Now, with the support of CSU and other programs, we've been able to open our own clinic. So far we've helped over 4,500 patients, and we're aiming to double every year the attention. What we're aiming to with these programs like CSU coming here in Ecuador is to improve your knowledge and skills in a very unique environment. I think that what gives ROMP a very unique set of skills and knowledge to pass on to our volunteers is the fact that a lot of the people that work in ROMP are users of a prosthetic device. So David, me, and some of the volunteers that work along our centers are not only experienced in the field of prosthetic care, but are also amputees that know exactly what our patients need and how to connect what they need with what the prosthetist or potential prosthetist is going to learn here in Ecuador. Could you help me with the next slide? So this is a very unique opportunity. I've been walking with CSU along these programs since 2019 as a volunteer myself, and since 2020, despite the pandemic, we've been working together. It's one of my favorite programs, to be really honest. I think the volunteers not only come here to learn more about prosthetics. You have a very complete and integral program in which you gain knowledge in the field. You're able to work directly with prosthetists, but also with the patients. But this experience gives you a very unique cultural understanding of what people in South America go through as a person with a disability. So it not only gives you a very practical, technical experience as you practice the development of these devices, but it also gives you as a prosthetist or a future prosthetist the ability to understand different necessities and how you can work in different environments to cover those needs. So I do believe this program, this volunteering program especially, it's a very great opportunity if you want to study abroad for maybe a short time, but you want to really soak in a different culture, different knowledge, and gain a very unique set of skills in the field, right? Could you help me with the next slide, please? So I do believe COVID, maybe for most of us, was very limiting. Certainly for ROMP was start of our regattas in 2020, and we have to postpone some of our volunteer programs. Despite the pandemic, we discovered in 2021 that we could and we were able to develop very safe programs and brigadas with our pilot start with a pop-up clinic and moving our services to our support and partner centers here in Quito. So in 2021, we did with CSU a pop-up clinic in an hacienda that's kind of a farm, big wide and big open spaces. Patients were very safe. the staff would say, because everything was outdoors. And, 0 infections within our staff, within the patients and the programs. So we can assure that you can have the most experience with certain protocols that will assure your safety, which allow us actually in 2022 to grow. We now have our own facility. We're starting a program where we can have our own facility here in Quito, but we still are working with other centers. So the in Quito will have a very well, we will be the hostess of the first pilot program with CSU in our own facility, and I think you'll be very pleased to be here. The volunteers will feel at home. It's a gorgeous place. Patients are already coming. We're having a lot of I think not only requirements of a lot of patients that we didn't need the prosthetic care, but also we have a lot new of prosthetists that are joining our teams. So we'll have a lot more of support and professionals that will share their knowledge with our program volunteers. Can you help me with the next slide? So as I was telling you, well, certainly our logistics and some of our itineraries changed over the past 2 years, but we've managed to create the same experience for you guys with just some protocols that will assure that you won't get infected here and that you will come to a safe environment to learn not only during this time of service about prosthetic care, but also that you'll soak into Ecuadorian culture as much as possible. We're keeping, as our government have designed protocols of uses of masks, social distancing, and hand washing. Probably in the next few months, some of those restrictions will change. Probably not indoors, but I think that maybe when CSU is here, we'll have a little bit more flexible protocols. Still during the time we will be treating patients, we'll keep the same biosecurity protocol, so we assure that no one can get sick and within the time we are giving prosthetic care. Could you help me with the next one? Well, so I think I'm gonna give Brett the post, but I think to summarize, it'll be my pleasure as program director to have as many of you to share this experience. As an amputee myself, I cannot be thankful enough with ROMP for the work they do. It's given me not only my mobility back, but the ability to work and be part of this society as I should and as my right is. So I know this is very important, not only for the patients, but also the patients give a lot back to the volunteers. I think it's a very unique program where you can learn really to improve the skills you not only have as a prosthetist, but also as a human being within the treatment of prosthetic care. So be welcome to come. We'll be really happy to have you here.
Great, thank you so much, Sarita. And yes, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Kevin Lehrer.
All right. Thank you, Sara and Jonathan. And ROMP is just a tremendous opportunity. I just want to fill in a few details now from the perspective of engineering education. And first of all, I think as all of you probably know, the huge benefits of students studying abroad. And engineers are people too. And so we also need diversity of thought in order to come at problems from different angles, different perspectives, and clearly something that our students crave while they are learning the skills of being biomedical engineers is to understand how the things that they will be creating in their careers impact patients. And so that clinical experience is really critical. And it's just fantastic, the direct interaction with patients that is afforded by this program. And we'll be saying a little bit more about that as we go. And really kind of as a bottom line, I think the great thing that I like to see our students have to begin with, but develop more of as we go forward, is empathy. And that empathy can come from walking on a platform as seen in the upper left image, using a device that gives a person the opportunity to feel what it's like to walk on a prosthetic limb, to interacting with patients like this young 2-year-old boy that's a patient in the lower right, that was an inspiration to us all in the program that we just did in August during the pandemic. So to just say, if we could go to the next slide, please, Deb. Just to say a little bit more about the setting and how the pandemic changed the setting for our program. There was a hacienda, or kind of a large residential estate or farm, as Sara referred to, that was a new venue for this program in 2021. And so prior to that, in 2018 or 2019, it was a more kind of standard clinical setting. You can see a small image on the upper left of the images there, where a volunteer is working with the patients in kind of this normal hospital-like or clinical-like setting with the privacy curtains and so forth there, compared to the other photos that show all this green everywhere, where we were immersed in this open-air setting for working during the pandemic. And I just want to point out, and I hope they have this right, and Sara or Jonathan, you can straighten me out afterwards if I've got some of this wrong, but up until about a month before our program occurred in August of 2021, we were expecting to work in kind of a standard clinical setting that had been used in the past. But due to some government regulation changes, specifically due to COVID and requirements on international volunteers, we were no longer allowed to use that government-related facility. And so to ROMP's credit, they scrambled, and at the last minute, one of their strong sponsors, whose family lives at this hacienda, volunteered it, and it was just a tremendous place to work. And as Sara mentioned, I think from those challenges came some additional benefits. So clearly the open air setting reduced the risk of COVID transmission because we were in the outdoors with greater airflux. But there were challenges associated with it. It was hard to have the same facilities or as much of equipment that was available inside the standard clinical setting. But the great thing about new challenges like this is that they bring forth innovation. And the innovation in this case was something that David Krupa and others at ROMP refer to as the PopUp Clinic, meaning a way to bring that equipment quickly in, set it up, serve a number of patients, and then take it down and move it on to another area. So I think in some sense, COVID drove the ability to prototype this facility to serve patients in more remote settings. So I think a takeaway for me, and perhaps for some more of us in this type of situation of international education during a pandemic, is, as always, remain flexible. There's always an issue about weighing risks versus potential benefits amidst that, but I think everything was done carefully and smartly, but we weren't scared or afraid to try new things. And another thing that I just cannot say enough about is that if you're going to be trying to do these kind of programs, especially in challenging times like pandemics, it's really critical to have the right people that you're working with internationally. And Deb, just kudos to her for identifying ROMP as a great international team to work with for us. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Deb. Just very briefly, want to tell you a little bit about what the program is like for our students. So there's kind of 3 major sections to it. There's a number of cultural and environmental tours, and those address a lot of outdoor activity, that's really fun. There's Quito itself is a high city. It's 9 or 10,000 feet. And we take a teleferico ride from there up to about 13,000 and swing out over Quito, hike down into a gorge and experience some other things. And I'm going to let Brett tell you a little bit more about the cultural experiences towards the end of the presentation here. Another key part was seminars. And by the way, those tours, they were very similar, I think, to what the tours had been previously before the pandemic. And then there were seminars. This is daily instruction. If you can see in this lower photograph, David Krupa is the individual you can't quite make out standing up there in the front. And this again was very similar pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, except just imagine the walls of this room being removed and it turning into an open air pavilion where after lunch each day we would enjoy some technical content and in some cases even guest speakers. And I think maybe those guest speakers that were brought in by telecommunications, by remote web interfaces, maybe that's something else the pandemic gave us, is a better ability to bring in speakers from abroad. But the real heart of the activity for our students is the clinical experience and patient interactions. We'll talk about that on the next slide, please, Deb. So here's some snapshots about the clinical activities and the kind of things the students get involved in. And I want to talk a little bit about what was the same and what was different because of the pandemic setting. So in general, what happens is ROMP brings in a number of deserving patients who need prosthetics, and the students help in fabricating those prosthetics and then doing some of the final construction and adjustment of those. And then they get to watch the prosthetists work or in some way support them in rehabilitation or training. So the upper photos show the same process going on pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. A plaster cast is made of the residual limb, first a negative cast and then a positive cast. And these two students in the upper photos are working with those little vibrating saws that you use to cut off your cast. And so they're removing the outer plaster cast from the inner mold that's going to serve as, in turn, a mold for a plastic cup that forms part of the prosthetic. So many of these activities were no different because of the pandemic, but the setting in which it occurred was different. But it was great that they were able to do the same sorts of things. And those things include, for example, using equipment that had to be installed in this outdoor pop-up clinic. On the lower right, for example, you can get some sense of that, of one of the students polishing the edges of one of these plastic cups. The photo just to the left of it, of the students assembling the purple cup on top of the steel tube and foot to make a prosthetic. So in terms of rehabilitation and gait training, that changed a little bit, because if we had been in the clinic, we would have had access to things like this platform with the parallel bars, where the prosthetist David Krupa, sitting at the far left side, is watching the patient try out the new prosthetics there. Flat spaces were a little bit in demand at the pop-up clinic. You can see a patient there trying out a new prosthetic on the concrete platform next to the grass. And so even in that case, though, our students got to see that as an engineering challenge. They said, so David mentioned, boy, it'd be great in this pop-up clinic to have a set of these parallel bars. Gives the students an opportunity to think about, how could we make a compact, portable set of these parallel bars for the students to work with? And then, of course, one of the most moving and emotional experiences was interacting with the patients and observing the impact. Next slide, please, Deb. So those patient interactions were a range of things, from helping with things like the prosthetic adjustment. So we see one of our students wearing the purple shirt in the upper right inset, making an adjustment to align the direction of the prosthetic limb so that it supports the weight correctly and influences the gait, to lots of interactions with the patients. And I think one of the cool things that happened in this open air setting is that patients weren't partitioned off into their separate rooms, but it was more of a community feeling, and everybody was celebrating the successes of one another in walking on these new prosthetics. We got to observe the woman who's standing in the middle of the lower photograph dancing to celebrate her new prosthesis, and the young patient just to the right of her in the photo kicking a soccer ball with his new prosthesis. So those were very moving experiences to all of us. Next slide, please, Deb. We also, despite kind of this more or less formal setting, still got to be involved in some of the very most recent technology for prosthetics fabrication. In fact, this, I think, may in part have been driven by the need to figure out how to make these prostheses more quickly in a more limited setting. And so the students got to be involved with some of the first applications of something called the direct socket process within the ROMP group. I think David Krupp had mentioned he'd done 1 or 2 of these before. And it basically bypasses the whole plaster molding. I won't spend too much details about it. It basically is using an epoxy resin that directly forms the socket on the patient's leg. And you can see our students, like the young woman in the baseball cap in the lower left, putting liners on the patient's leg and fitting them with this fiber sock before injecting the epoxy. And so the ROMP was excellent about getting our students' hands involved and doing the things engineering students like to do, which is figure out how things work and try them out. And the students even got to learn from some of the mistakes of this early process. I think for the woman that was being fitted in this particular lower photo, they ran the resin a little too high up the leg, the residual limb, and as a result, it was really hard to get that socket off, but they figured out what was going on. They did another try and they learned about it. So they got to see in the process of learning, working with the other prosthetists that are pictured in that photo. Next slide, please, Deb. So my final thing I just want to put up, Deb and Brett kindly said, since you're an engineer, Kevin, you're allowed 1 graph. And so we just wanted to show that on this, and I apologize, the font size is a little small, but this is basically a plot of participation in study abroad by college, with business on the left, and I think the Warner College of Natural Resources on the right. Engineering is the bar right next to the far right-hand side that shows the 14 students who participated in the Ecuador program. So we were proud that we were providing study abroad opportunities amidst the entire university during a pandemic. With that, I want to go ahead and turn the last few slides of presentation over to the co-leader of the August 14 program, Ms. Brett Epic-Beal. And Brett is going to talk to you some about the program she did to help students prepare for this experience, as well as the cultural activities.
Great, thank you so much, Kevin. And just a couple of things to add into that, and Kevin may have mentioned them. I was responding to something over here, but the direct socket kits were not only innovative in Ecuador, the students actually carried them from Fort Collins to Quito. So it speaks to the collaboration and efforts that ROMP just is and stands for. Might be getting a little teary here because it's just really cool. And again, to underscore the importance of a strong partner, because ROMP has been phenomenal in providing extraordinary experiences for our students and the flexibility to adapt to situations. So those of you considering other partnerships like this, again, for me, I can't underscore the importance of a strong in-country partner. Meanwhile, back here at our farm, and in response to some of the students that I had spoken to prior to going to the trip, one of the bits of feedback that I'd gotten from pretty much every student, except for a few who are fluent in Spanish already, was that they wish they had known more Spanish before they'd gone down to Ecuador. So I reached out to the CSU Todos Santos Center in Todos Santos, Mexico, because I had taken a class from Olaf Morales, and he's a phenomenal teacher, and said, hey, is there any way we could get a tutorial? And Olaf is amazing. So the long story short is we created a 4-week tutorial on, as it turned out, somewhat introductory Spanish. But depending on the group this year, if they're interested, we'll work with Olaf again and see what we can do. The 4 weeks that we met was, I think, 1.5 hours each week. And he's phenomenal because he can sculpt to an audience. He's very used to working online. So he had some really great interactive exercises, gave us, you know, an overview of letters and how to pronounce things, which of course in Spanish is great because it's so phonetic, but if you're not exactly sure, you don't really know. some basic verbs and words, parts of the body, that kind of thing. And I think the students found it of value, even those students who kind of spoke conversational Spanish at home, but perhaps not as broadly based Spanish as we encountered in Ecuador. I also know that this next year we will include a bit on the fruits of Ecuador because, again, ROMP was phenomenal and exposed us to all these amazing foods, and there were fresh fruit trees at the hacienda, but we didn't know what they were. So we wanted to know more, and we will know more this coming summer. Next slide. And then as we think about cultural experiences, they're really, in some ways, the foundation and the overview or the encompassing piece of any kind of experience. And I think to go to a place and do a thing is phenomenal, but to not understand or be able to experience a broader context is really tough. For those of you who are at CSU, it'd be like coming to Colorado State University for education and spending all your time in Clark 101, which is one of our large classrooms, which it doesn't explain the whole experience or doesn't allow that depth and richness. So again, to ROMP's credit, they were flexible. In past years, we've had some flexibility to take the students away for a weekend and get that kind of experience. With COVID, that was not possible. So the ROMP team created some amazing experiences. As Kevin mentioned, you can see in the top left-hand picture there, our group went to the Teleférico, which is like a gondola that goes up a mountain, and that behind them is a view of Quito. We had several different kinds of experiences, including a hike in the rainforest. And if any of you have opened up that source article, I think you'll see a picture of Michaela Coe standing like this in her Superwoman pose right before she went ziplining. Some just great experiences to round that out. In the center of this slide, you'll see Roberto, and I can't remember this woman's name. Sarita, can you help me with her name?
Yeah, Rosemary.
Rosemary, she's amazing. She's one that you saw in the previous picture with the walker. She and Roberto are dancing there. That was just kind of spontaneous. It was great. And one of the amazing things, and again, the impact cannot be overstated, she literally arrived here in a wheelchair, literally. So we had to carry, not we, people stronger than I, had to carry her from the bus to the place at the hacienda where we were working, and then she was literally able to walk out. So in 4 days, her life was transformed, and that's what this program is all about. On the left-hand side, you'll see Sydney with a prosthetist from Cuenca, and again, I can't remember his name, but the ability to interact one-on-one with professionals in the area and people who are just living in Ecuador. I think it's safe to say that it was certainly impactful for all and possibly life-changing for some. Next slide. At this point, we'd like to open it up to our student panelists, and you see their pictures on the left. And if I can have them open their videos, it's hard to tell with these presentations. There's Kalena. What their experiences are. Sydney Alderfer, who was in the previous photo, is a graduating 5th year BME and chemical biological engineering student. Dylan, you saw very prominently in many of the slides, he was working a lot on the direct socket technology. And Kalena, who actually was on the swing in one of Kevin's slides. So I don't even think that was intentional. They're just definitely participants in our program. And thank you all for being here. Dylan is also graduating this year as a BME mechanical, and Kalena is currently in her 3rd year. So she went on this program as a 2nd year student, which is really amazing. So for timing, we have about 10 minutes, I think, for them to talk a little bit about their experiences. And we do invite questions in the chat if you'd like for them to answer. But I'm just going to kind of open it up and ask them if they could each describe why you wanted to participate in this particular study abroad program. And maybe we'll just go in alphabetical order for this first one, my last name. So Sydney, do you want to respond, then Dylan, then Kalena?
Yeah, sure. And it says my video is muted by the host. So if you can fix that, I could turn that on and see all your faces. But yeah, my name is Cindy Alderfer. I'm a 5th year biomedical and chemical engineering student, like Brett said, and I wanted to participate in this program because it gives a lot of hands-on experience that we don't necessarily get the same type in my chemical engineering labs. And I was also just really excited about the opportunity to interact with real people and get to use the things I've been learning over the past 4 years in the context of real human lives.
Thanks. Dylan, are you here?
Yeah, hello, I'm here. Sorry about that. As Brett said, my name is Dylan. I'm a 5th year BME mech, and I wanted to participate in this program because I wanted to get some of the experience, some hands-on experience that you kind of don't get just sitting from in the classroom and doing projects and stuff like that. You get to working with like actual patients and stuff like that. Going into it, I didn't really have too many expectations, and coming out of it, I can say that it's really a really decent and really fun program. I just wish I had participated in it a little bit sooner. And honestly, gave me so much more insight into the stuff I want to do and the potential outcomes of how that can impact people's lives.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kalena, and so I really wanted to go on this program because I love to travel, but I feel like after a certain point, I've just seen walking around a city, and you're kind of just doing the same sorts of activities where you go, and I wanted to be able to combine being able to travel and go new places with doing actual meaningful work that relates to what I've been studying and what I want to actually pursue. And so I thought this was a really cool way to be able to do that. And I had been wanting to go on this trip since I started school and first heard someone mention it. I was like, that's a thing? Engineers can actually study abroad? And so, with COVID, all of that sort of changed. But I think getting to wait a little longer too made me even more excited to be able to go.
Super, thank you. And this is a difficult question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And I'm just wondering, how do you think the pandemic affected your experience? Things that were a little more difficult or challenging, things that you didn't expect. How did that play out? And let's go with Dylan, Kalena, and Sydney.
For me, I don't really feel like the pandemic influenced my experience too much. Having a pop-up clinic and being out in the open and wearing the masks wasn't really a problem for me either. I didn't really have too much. I wasn't really hesitant to go on this program. I didn't really have any expectations either because I'd never traveled abroad before. So I was a little nervous to go forward with it, but it was just a fun time overall, even despite the pandemic going on.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. And I think definitely more logistic things to figure out, everyone having tests before we left and when we got back and everything. But I don't think much of a huge difference. And I think they did a really good job of still having us being able to go try all these activities and try new foods and go places and stuff. So I think overall it was still a fantastic experience. And I think whether it was in pandemic times or not, it still would be just as valuable and just as fun.
Yeah, I think for me, deciding to go was harder because of the pandemic. I was a little hesitant just because I wanted to make sure I was making responsible decisions to keep not just myself safe, but also the people that we were going to help. Nobody wants to bring COVID with you to this country. So, but I felt really good about all the precautions that CSU was taking and that we would be taking with ROMP while we were there. And then as far as how it impacted our experience while we were there, I'm hesitant always to say that the pandemic has made anything better, but I really do think that we had the opportunity to experience a really, really unique version of this program that I hope they'll carry over for future students, because we had a lot more fun than I think we could have had if we were more isolated in rooms in a more clinical setting.
Perfect, great. Thank you all so much. And I will admit, I thought this went till 10. This goes till 9:50. So we are sadly out of time, but I know that many of you have additional questions. I'm available, Kevin's available, Deb's available. We're happy to answer your questions, and I'll turn it over to Sarah Olson. I think she's here to close us out.
Yes, thank you so much to all of our panelists. What an interesting session. I'm so intrigued to learn more about this incredible program and just to see it grow and thrive. I just wanted to remind everyone as well that there'll be a short survey that if you could fill that out afterward, it'll come up on the as a link when you leave the session. There are lots of other incredible sessions throughout the rest of the day as well. The next one starts at 10 a.m. Hope to see you there. But thank you again to this incredible panel for sharing your experiences. Thank you for our students, for our friends from Guatemala and from Ecuador for joining. And we look forward to hopefully hosting you all in person one day soon. Thank you everyone for your time, and we'll see you at the next session.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.